My mother had prayed to St. Anne after 3 boys, prayed, did novenas, lit candles, and asked for a girl. And if she got one, she would call her Anne, and so she did. Bryan Adams has been sending me songs for a few years now, and I just didn't ever hear anything that grabbed me until this song. And came by, sang the background vocals, played a little guitar, and there it was. As far back as I can remember, I sang. The first time I became aware that I could sing maybe a little bit better than others was I was driving in a car, and I was 9 years old, and I was singing along to the radio. And my aunt-to-be was in the front seat, and she turned to my mother and said, "My, Marion, she has a beautiful voice." I later found out that Aunt Kay was tone deaf. But I guess it doesn't mean she couldn't detect talent. I came from Nova Scotia. I was so far removed from anything show business. I read all of that in magazines, and that's as close as I would ever get to it. And I knew that. In my second year of university, my brother David was an intern, and a nurse he worked with was on Sing Along Jubilee. And he said, "Well, how would I go about getting some application forms? I have a sister who sings very well, I think." I sent them in and flew to Halifax and auditioned. And after it was over, they wrote me a letter and said that they didn't need any altos that year, and they flatly turned me down. So that was the end of my singing career. It's always been a dilemma, and there's always been that stamp. And you go into the music stores and you've got a pop album and you try and put it, and they put it in the country category. I had an album called Croonin', which was a tribute to the singers of the 50s, people who were my heroes, people like Patti Page, Rosemary Clooney, Doris Day, Joe Stafford, all those people. And it was strictly a standards album. And it used to end up in the country category. And I'm going, well, but it's not a country record. What goes around comes around. This latest album, this self-titled album of mine, which I think is one of the best I've ever done, is very similar to the early albums I did. And those are the albums where there was a lot of variety and a little bit of everything, you know, a little country, a little pop, a little this, a little that. And I think this album is closer to those early albums than anything I've ever done. If I don't connect with an audience in the first half hour that I'm on stage, then I have to do something. And believe me, before I leave that stage, there's a connection. Come hell or high water, there's a connection. Every night before I do a show like this, I get together with all the singers on stage and a couple of guitars, and we go into my dressing room and we warm up. And what we do is we sing songs, any songs at all, as they pop into our heads. Over the years, when people have been in on those warm-ups, they've been in the dressing room and have been privy to the warm-ups, many of them have said, "Wouldn't it be nice if the audience could hear that?" So it's only taken 25 years, but I've finally gotten around to bringing the dressing room to the stage. So here we are. My career started in Halifax. That first audition that I failed was in Halifax. I started university in Halifax and came back to Halifax to do this special. They were such an enthusiastic crowd. We couldn't have picked a better place. And so often people say, you can't go home. And every time I've ever played Halifax, I've gotten the same kind of response. I think my voice is better now than it's ever been. And it's kind of frustrating that my most successful years were happening while I was still learning. But I will continue to sing until such time as I know that my voice is failing, and I'll be able to tell. And as long as people continue to listen, I'll continue to sing.